All right, so today I'm working on a 2005 Lexus RX 330. The transmission is a U151 5-speed. And I think the number one problem, or the most common problem with this transmission, are the solenoids. All right, I change the solenoids, 4 in particular, on every overhaul. All right, the problem solenoids on this transmission are the SL1, the SL2, and SL3. Now when I do an overhaul, I change those 3, plus the SLT solenoid, which is the pressure solenoid. Okay, these are what the solenoids look like. There's valves in here. I'm going to get a close-up shot and pull a couple out of the valve body. There's other solenoids on here which I'll identify for you, like the DSL, which is lock-up, the S4. Those are on-off. They're generally not a problem. So these inside these solenoids, there's valves, and these solenoids control the apply and release of the clutch packs. Okay, so let's say, for instance, a common problem with this is like the 2-3 shift. Okay, so I think for the 2-3 shift, you have to energize the SL1 and de-energize the SL2. And that transition has to be, the timing has to be perfect. And if the timing is not perfect, you can get a flared shift, you can get a slide bump. And generally that would be because the solenoid could be hanging up, the valve could be hanging up inside the solenoid. So I've tried, honestly, to reuse these solenoids after overhaul by cleaning them up, putting them in the mineral spirits, even brake clean, blowing them out, make sure the valve is free. It never worked out for me, so now I change all 4 of those, and you absolutely have to do a memory reset when the transmission is back in the car with the scan tool. Okay, if you try to not do the memory reset, just say, for instance, you overhaul the unit with the new solenoid, you put it back in now, without doing a memory reset, you may have a bind up on the 2 to 3 because everything is new and the problem is solved. If you try to drive this thing out and adapt it, more than likely, probably burn the unit out on the road test. So a memory reset is an absolute must. And just say you're having a shifting problem, and you do a memory reset to try to correct it. Sometimes it will, sometimes it won't. But if it corrects it and then the problem comes back, then you know that there's something going on. So what I want to do is I'll get a little closer and I'll show you the solenoids. The solenoids actually you can actually mix them up. I know when I did my teardown video on the U151, I was showing you some of them, but they can fit in other holes that the solenoids are in. So the SL1 solenoid is by itself, the SLT solenoid is by itself, and the SL2 and 3 solenoids are the same. And if you look at them, you can see, they're completely different, but again, you can put them in the wrong spot. So let me get a little closer here and I'll show you these solenoids. Now also, I did want to mention there is a company, or I should say that they do make these solenoids on the aftermarket. I honestly have never used them, I have never tried them, and when I talk to my supplier, he mainly sells the OE. That's all I would use. They are a little expensive. I get, being a shop, and I get this stuff at a little bit of a discount or wholesale, I probably pay, I'm gonna take a guesstimate and say maybe $125 a piece. But once I put these solenoids in, once I do the memory reset, I honestly very rarely have a problem. And a couple times when I try to get away with using them, maybe it came in with a clock screen, I cleaned them up real good, it just never worked out. Even valve bodies, rebuilt valve bodies that I bought, you can see that the solenoids were not new, and that didn't even work out. This one time when I had a transmission, I was completely submerged with water, and all the solenoids should have been changed. That was a little expensive to do. So I bought a rebuilt valve body, and I give them the core, and they're, should be tested or new or whatever the case may be. I think on the 4th valve body that I installed, that finally worked, but each valve body was doing something different. delaying in drive, chatter in reverse, flaring on a 2-3. I was trying to do relearns. It would work, and it would go back to the same way. And I think these solenoids just are a major problem. And when the transmission goes bad and you are doing the overhaul, you know, you really got to change those, and you absolutely have to do the memory reset to erase that history of how this thing used to shift, because the PCM is going to try to make up for a slipping clutch or whatever the case may be, but it can only do that so much before, you know, the transmission is going to go bad or the clutches go bad. So let me get a little closer for you here, and I'll take some of these out. I'll just show you the difference. I'll identify the solenoids for you, and I will be right back. Okay. All right, so just to identify these solenoids real quick for you. Start with this one here. All right, this is the SL1. This is the SLT, or the pressure solenoid. This is the SL3 solenoid, the SR, the S4, the SL2, and the DSL, which also was lockup, which is on-off. Okay, so we're going to take these two solenoids out here, the SL3 and the SLT. Take a look at the difference. I gotta get the bracket here. All right, and just to let you know, here, so I can take the SL3 out, and this is the pressure one, and again, it fits right in there. So if you look at the solenoids, you can see, you know, the difference in the solenoids here, so you got to be careful. Again, the SL2 and SL3 are the same. The SL1 is by itself, and the SLT is by itself. But again, I highly recommend changing these solenoids if this transmission comes in damaged or burnt out or whatever the case may be. You know, we were talking before about the 2-3 shift, about energizing the SL1 and de-energizing the SL2. And that has to happen, you know, the timing is everything. It happens simultaneously. So if something is hanging up within the solenoid, you know, you're going to get a flared shift or a slight bump or something to that effect. And it's very, very critical timing. So I'm going to be opening up this and going through everything. When I do these U-series transmissions, the main section of the valve body, this main section of the valve body, I honestly pull, because even the slightest crap is going to make these valves hang. I pull the valves, all the valves out, and I wash the casting up. I lay everything out, and then I put the valves back and make sure they drop it under their own weight, like I normally do, like when I work on a Honda. So that's really about it. You know, like I said, a big problem with this are those solenoids, and they can cause all kinds of shifting problems. So I recommend changing them, you know, pretty much after you do an overhaul. Now, if you're having some kind of a shifting problem, say you're having a 2-3 shift problem, before you do anything, what you can try to do is a memory reset, you know, to see if it fixes it. I've actually had, on 2 occasions, the 6-speed Toyota, which is, I think they were U760s, and it had a little hitch on the 2-3, or it had a flare on a 2-3 on 2 occasions, and I haven't seen the people since. I said, the first thing let me try to do is a shift adapt reset, and it actually worked. We did the reset, we drove it out. You know, once you do a memory reset or a shift adapt reset, you probably should drive the car and let it shift up the gears, constantly starting and stopping, and let it shift all the way up for about 10 to 15, maybe about 15 minutes. And also, most of these cars adapt, you know, when the transmission is hot, maybe 130 degrees and above, 140 degrees and above. But again, I wouldn't recommend trying to drive this thing out so it adapts, because you can do some damage. You actually can burn the clutches out on the road test. Again, I've seen that. You know, you constantly do a reset, you're constantly driving it, and that's really not the way to go. So I guess that is about it on this U151. As a standard overhaul procedure, I changed the SL1, SL2, SL3, and SLT solenoids. And also, after the overhaul, I do a memory reset. And for that, you really need, you know, a scan tool. If you have a decent scan tool like a Snap-on or an Nortel. Those are the two that I've used in the past. You know, there are other ones that will do it, but bottom line is you really have to do it. All right, so I guess that's about it on this. I thank you guys for watching. Have a great day, and we will see you next one.